with the food that we do at Sixpenny, we just want to sort of showcase the product in itself, and that's where we strive to find the best of the best. Being able to use these smaller producers, they have a point of difference, which makes it nice to be able to use them and just showcase them with a piece of protein, just serve it with a sauce and maybe a little garnish on the side or things like that.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. A connection made through food can be lifelong, whether it be putting your hands in the soil to discover what it takes to farm or grow quality produce, or sharing food with friends and family. As a child, Aaron Ward spent a lot of time on his grandparents' farm, and it ignited a love for food that has seen him trailblaze a career as one of our best young chefs. So Aaron, Sixpenny is one of Australia's best restaurants, but you've made a name for yourself with baking of late. Is this something you've always been interested in?
Yeah, I think I've had I don't know, I think it's been a little bit of a calling of mine. Like I enjoy baking and sort of not so much the sweeter side of things. Like I enjoy the bread side of things and croissants lately. They've been a bit of fun. But yeah, it's always been sort of a passion. Like I've done it since my grandparents sort of they have a dairy, or used to have a dairy farm. So going there and they would bake their own bread and that sort of thing in the mornings and that kind of thing. So that was pretty exciting, and I think I've just sort of just done it from there. Yeah, just continued it on, I guess.
Sixpenny is one of the most beautiful and unique restaurants in Australia, and Dan Puskas is a bit of an enigma and not in the limelight as much as some other chefs. What's it like working in that kitchen with Dan?
Yeah, it's good. It's enjoyable. Like you said, it's not really in the limelight as much as some other restaurants, but I think that's sort of what we like about it as well. It's like in a small suburb, it's not really outside of Sydney, but it's a little bit out of the CBD, and yeah, I think that's what makes it so nice. Like you can come out of the city, you just get on the train or a couple of minute drive out west, and it's sort of you're in like this country streets almost feel. Like there's across the road, there's a pizza shop, a fish shop, there's a barber, little pub down the road, and then there's Sixpenny on the corner up near the school. So it's one of those things where you can go, it's not, I don't know, it's not a location restaurant, but it's nice to go there and you can sort of chill, especially on Sundays, like Sunday during lunch service. I don't think there's any better service. That's probably my favorite out of a lot of them. Everyone's super chilled. Like it's such a nice day. The sun comes in the front window, and yeah, it's just a nice sort of area to sort of sit, have a glass of wine, have some nice food, and just like relax for the whole day. It's nice.
What was food like for you and your family growing up?
Food growing up as a kid, just at home, it wasn't a huge part of home. We were sort of more focused on playing sports and that sort of thing. Occasionally, I'd sort of bake with my mum or that sort of thing, but we'd generally be running around outside playing sports. But we'd go to the grandparents' farm sort of every school holidays. We'd go up there, and which was out at Muswellbrook, out near Scone. They had the farm, so we'd go out there and they'd grow their own fruit and veg, and they had chickens for eggs and that sort of thing. And like I said before, we bake bread in the morning before breakfast, so nice and early mornings. Get out, milk the cows and that sort of stuff all before breakfast, and then collect the eggs and we go have them for breakfast, which is nice. But they had their own. They would kill some of the cows or the chickens, which they'd use for the meat, and everything was used using the old the saying like nose to tail, but like everything was sort of was utilized. We'd be eating sort of braised cow's tails and livers from the lambs and stuff like that, instead of, I don't know, what I was used to sort of eating steak at home. I didn't really understand what it was about and why we were doing it. Sort of until I became a chef and I was actually cooking professionally, and sort of actually understood utilizing all those ingredients and those parts of the animal. it had to be done, and I guess it wasn't from like a money point of view. It was just the fact of living on the farm, and you just wanted to utilize everything that you grew and sort of and had on the farm there, and it was accessible. You wanted to use everything.
What lured you to become a chef?
I think I was always into food. Like I loved eating food. I guess everyone does, but I just enjoyed um, the food side of things. Like I was good at, wasn't the greatest at school. I guess every report card I think I had said the same thing. I talked too much. I was always a social during lessons and that sort of thing. So um, cooking was, I guess, being a part of the kitchen. It was a social side of things as well as working. So I think playing, yeah, like I just think getting into the kitchen, being part of food. I was good at food technology and hospitality at school, so I guess that sort of lured me into it. Being good at something, I think it's sort of carried over and made a career out of it, which is probably a smarter thing. Um, but then again, I guess playing a lot of team sports growing up as well. Um, I'd play football in winter and cricket in summer, so being a part of that team atmosphere, I found cooking was and being in the kitchen was a similar sort of thing. Like you always sort of trying to achieve the same thing, having a good service and like having happy guests was very similar to sort of winning a game of sport as well.
Those early years when you were doing your apprenticeship, was there a moment when you sort of thought, yeah, this is what I love to do?
Yeah, like I think I always wanted to cook. And like early on in the year, the apprenticeship, it wasn't hard, but like it was always, I guess everyone's had their same sort of struggles. You'd finish school, you'd go into apprenticeship, and all your mates would be out partying on the weekend, but you'd be at work cooking food until I don't know 10, 11 o'clock at night. So you'd sort of miss out on all those parties. But I think just the fact of being in that team atmosphere, I think it was always something that I really enjoyed. It wasn't you had I don't know, I guess four or five, maybe more people around you that were all in the same sort of boat. Like you just wanted to do better between the lot of you, and that's what sort of I don't know I was excited about and kept me into the industry now.
What's been some of the real key moments in your career and influences that have helped shape you as a chef?
Um, the key, I think the people around me sort of inspire and influence me. Like you see like other chefs I'm learning every day. Like you learn off all the other chefs and that are in the kitchen or around you that are in other restaurants that you see and talk to. Like it's a pretty small industry, especially in Sydney. Like everyone sort of knows everyone or knows of someone that knows someone. So you try and learn as much as possible off those guys, and it just makes it that little bit easier just to learn something every day, which you do. Otherwise, you just sort of get a bit stagnant. Um, so yeah,
What's some of the key venues that you've worked at through your career? Can you take us on a journey?
yeah. I think when I was in I worked in Newcastle for a little while at a restaurant called Bacchus, which was sort of my first sort of step into, I guess, fine dining sort of food. Working there with the chef there, Tim Montgomery. Um, he was, yeah, pretty inspirational to me then and still now. Like he was so very creative, and the way that he plated food was like artwork and that sort of thing. So getting into that sort of restaurant from I was only I think maybe nine, maybe 20 years old. So sort of stepping into that was a big leap from me coming from country Taree and going into Newcastle. And that kind of food, like I hadn't really seen. I'd seen it from Sydney, but hadn't really seen it in Newcastle or anything like that. So that was a bit of a leap and something that I really enjoyed. And I stayed there for a couple of years and learned a lot from Tim and the team there. But then I guess moving to Sydney and working again something completely different in Sixpenny, which was another massive leap for me. And staying there for for my first stint which was 5.5 years. So the stuff that I learnt there from James, who was one of the previous owners, chefs, and Dan himself. So yeah, like learning a lot from those guys and that sort of thing. So it was good to be a part of at the start and learning how to sort of open up a restaurant from scratch. I guess there's a lot of hard times and a lot of times where I was pulling out my hair and asking myself why I was actually doing it. Um, but yeah, like it was all worthwhile. Like we lost a lot of staff coming in at the beginning. Not that it was too hard. It was just I guess there's the setbacks of opening a restaurant. Like things are pretty tough at the beginning. Some people aren't going to like doing it, and some people do like doing it, I guess. And yeah, it was tough at the start. Like I said, there was a lot of hours at home pulling out my hair and asking myself why am I actually doing it. So yeah, Sixpenny was another one, and then I guess sort of traveling. I travelled overseas. I got the opportunity to travel overseas a couple of years ago, and I staged in a couple of restaurants over there in Copenhagen. Uh, so yeah, I got to stage in Relay and a mass. So again, those sorts of places sort of were on my list of whether I wanted to eat there, and then I got the opportunity to obviously stage there. So that was pretty inspiring. Like get to see a mass was like I think they were close to 90% of no waste in their food. So yeah, it was great, and like it really opened my eyes on everything. It wasn't just about putting food on the plate; it was about what was going on behind the scenes as well, and trying to minimalize all your waste, whether it came down to like reusing like scraps of lemon peels and things like that, just little things like that that I hadn't really sort of taken much notice to, but just really sort of opened my eyes into the whole wasting of food, I guess.
A few years ago, you took out Young Chef of the Year in Australia. What was that like, and what sort of impact did that have on you?
Yeah, pretty big thing. Like I guess that's why I did actually travel overseas and stage in those restaurants. That was part of the award, and I could travel. But yeah, it sort of opened a lot of. I got to meet a lot of people, which was probably the biggest thing that sort of come out of it, and like a lot of the young chefs that were a part of it, they're still good mates of mine now. But yeah, that was probably the biggest thing. Obviously, getting to meet a lot of the older chefs as well, which were a part of the judging panel, which was pretty amazing. Just getting to hear what they have to say and that sort of thing behind the scenes as much as in the judging panel, like just having chats with them, um, like normal day to day talk about food and what's going on. So like having the opportunity to be able to do that was pretty cool. And yeah, like I said, like getting the chance to travel and get to see other people's perspective of food was pretty amazing as well.
One of the beautiful things about Sixpenny is the small herb garden in the backyard and the vegetables that are grown on the farm off site. Well, tell us about the average day in the restaurant and what it's like working in that environment.
Yeah, it's sort of when we first opened, when James was part of the restaurant, we had the garden down in Barrel. Unfortunately, now that he's left, that's gone as well. But yeah, it was amazing. Like we would travel. I think it's about an hour and a half. James would go down twice a week, and he'd take one of the chefs or two of the chefs down at least once a week, whether it'd be doing some gardening or whether it'd be picking the vegetables that we had growing down there. But it was just sort of like I said, it comes down to utilizing everything, and that's sort of when you grow it yourself. I think you really want to utilize everything, whether it be the leaves of something or whether it's with a beetroot, whether you want to just use the whole beetroot, you really want to utilize even the leaves and stuff like the stems and things like that. So I think utilizing everything that you have when you grow it yourself was a massive thing that I learned. Um, with the garden out the back during winter, it's a bit of a dud. It's pretty hard because there's a big melaleuca tree that overhangs the fence, so it sort of shades the whole herb patch. So it's a bit hard to grow some things during winter. But during summer we have a lot of like lemon verbena and anise hyssop and lemon balm. There was one stage where we were growing native ginger, which is a pretty cool little plant. Like you can infuse. We were infusing a sorbet base with the leaves, which gave it a sort of a musk lolly sort of flavor, which was pretty cool and pretty interesting. Um, and yeah, like I said, there's a few little things that with the lemon myrtle and a few other little herbs there that you don't really see that too often. So it's nice to be able to grow a couple of things ourselves.
Dining at Sixpenny is a real journey with multiple courses. Tell us about the connection that you have with farmers and how you select your produce.
It, with Sixpenny, it's sort of we like to use a couple of small producers where we can. Um, Even with our final savoury course at the moment, instead of sort of having I don't know 180 to 190 portions of the one protein, we're sort of running a few different proteins for our final savoury throughout the week. So yeah, whether we run beef, pork, lamb, or duck, we sort of just break it up through the week and have one service with one protein, and then we'll go for another protein the next night, and so on. So depending on what night it is, just depends on what protein we'll run. So it makes it a bit easier to sort of use those smaller producers. Um, and not having to have 180 portions of something, we can sort of break it up and have 30 portions of this and 30 portions of that, or so on, which makes it a little bit easier. Plus, it makes it a bit more exciting to cook with as well, instead of coming in every night and just cooking the same thing over and over and over. You get a bit more. It's a bit more fun to sort of cook something different every night, which is good.
With this great connection that you have with the small producers, is there a pig farmer that you can tell us about and what's so great about what they do?
At the moment, we're using a Burradale pork, which is up in Toowoomba, up in Queensland. We've been using them. We use the loins. We get them in and we get them aged on the bone for a couple of weeks, um, and use those. We find it's like a good product. The ratio of fat to the meat on the actual loin is perfect for what we use. The size of the pig it is the perfect size, especially being in sort of a degustation restaurant. You couldn't have too big of a piece of big of meat, otherwise it comes down to wastage, and you're sort of trimming it back, and you're losing a lot to get that sort of that size that you need on the plate. But so we were able to use those guys, which is nice. But even back in again touching on that, in 2016, I went to it was part of a produce tour. We had the opportunity to go to Malanda Park, which is just a little north of Richmond. We were able to walk through the farm and sort of see the ins and outs of the farming of the pigs and hear their story and how they began and how it was all started off with growing sweet potatoes as a cover crop, and the pigs used to eat the leftover leaves that were there and sort of that sort of thing. And just going to small guys like that and hearing their stories is pretty nice, and yeah, touching base with those guys, which is good.
Does that make you cook differently when you understand the backstory of products like that?
Yeah, I think again you just want to. I think with the food that we do at Sixpenny, we just want to sort of showcase, I guess, the product in itself, and that's where we aim for seeking out these proteins, or whether it's protein or vegetable or fish or anything like that. We want to strive to find the best of the best, because how we do cook it is quite well. I don't want to say simple, but how it looks on the plate is quite simple. There's no sort of nothing's covering anything up. It is what it is on the plate. So we want to sort of find what's the best out there and use the best produce that we can. So being able to use these smaller guys, I guess, the smaller producers, they have a point of difference, which makes it nice to be able to use them and just showcase them with the piece of protein, just serve it with a sauce and maybe a little garnish on the side or things like that. So being able to use those and seeing what they've got and where it's come from, how it's grown and that sort of thing. There's no sort of nothing hidden behind the scenes that you don't actually know where it's from.
Aging pork loins for a couple of weeks. Why do you do that? What impact does it have? And what sort of dish did you create with that?
Yeah, I find it sort of it intensifies it, well, but it also tightens up the meat a little bit. So we're at the moment, like I said, we've been aging it for 2 weeks, and then we actually take it off we get it on the bone and we take the loins off the bone just for, I don't know, I guess it's just easier for us during service. But then we make a paste from black garlic and burnt onions, um, and then we glaze the pork, the loin in that. Then we cook it at a low temperature. Cook it at about, I think it's about 80 degrees. We cook the pork just till it reaches the internal temperature, and then we just sear it off in the pan just to give it a nice crust. So yeah, it's pretty tasty. It's almost like a, I don't know. I find sometimes it tastes similar to like a Chinese pork char siu sort of flavor. Um, yeah, yeah, it's pretty tasty.
As you alluded to, your creations, they look so simple, but they're so precise and beautifully balanced on the plate. Can you take us through the creative process and talk through a dish or two and where the inspiration comes from?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it is so simple. It looks so simple on the plate, so everything has to be done perfectly. Like whether it's portioned correctly, whether it's cooked perfectly, whether it's if it's something that's a little bit out in a jar, then the whole dish is completely off. Like if the sauce is a little bit out, or anything, the garnish or the leaves aren't cooked properly, or something like that, then the whole dish is put out of balance. So everything has to be done properly, perfectly, I guess, and to a standard that we're all happy with. And like the guys in the kitchen, we all know that. Like it just comes down to the point of you need to cook it properly, otherwise it just gets sent back, sort of thing. So that's where we're at in the kitchen, and yeah, that's what we've got to do.
Tell us a bit about your working relationship with Dan Puskas, one of Australia's best chefs, and Sixpenny, obviously one of Australia's best restaurants. How does that collaboration work when you're creating a dish?
Yeah, I guess we both have ideas, and we sort of we have a, I guess we go to one dish, and one of us will go around and play around with a few options and ideas, and then we just come together and we'll both taste it at the table, sort of thing. So it's sort of we don't. It's sort of one person will come up with the idea, I guess, and then we just test it and taste it. If we're happy with it, then we can sort of move forward. If not, then we have sort of a brainstorm and work on something to move it forward or start all over again. So yeah, there's a bit of work and time into coming up with a dish, even though it does look so simple. Um, there's so much work that goes behind the scenes in creating it and I guess prepping it. Like some things, for instance, on the menu, like the mead custard, that's been on the menu for a while now. One of the first desserts. It takes close to 10 weeks to actually make that before it gets onto the plate. Um, yeah, because we make our own mead, which is a honey wine. And then we take that mead and put a vinegar mother into it, which takes another sort of 5 to 6 weeks, and turning that into vinegar. So yeah, all around it's about close to 10 to 12 weeks, depending on what season it is and how quick the alcohol is produced. But yeah, it takes a while just to sort of get that dish on the plate.
You mentioned the pork loin that you're using. Pork is such a versatile protein. How important is that versatility in the kitchen? And is there other cuts that you've used over the years that you can tell us about?
Yeah, like you said, it is versatile, and that's what makes it, I think, for me, so special. There's been a few dishes that we've sort of played around with. There was one a couple of years ago. We would get a couple of suckling pigs in, and we'd get them in. I don't know, maybe twice a fortnight, one a week, once a fortnight. But we get two pigs in, so we'd have one each week, and we'd bone them out or break them down into 7 sections. So you'd get two legs, two shoulders, two pieces of belly, and then you get the head with the jowls and that sort of thing on it. And every service we'd roast up one of the sections, and then we just give it out as an extra course to guests. So each sort of each sort of section or piece of the pig would take different cooking techniques. So we'd roast them all up, but everything could be different. So the bellies would have a certain way to cook, and the legs and shoulders we'd cook differently again. But again, like I said, it was served so simply. Like we just serve it with a sauce that was made from a pork jus and yogurt, and then we'd serve it with some summer savoury. So it was pretty simple, but it all sort of made sense because the suckling pigs were fed on yogurt whey when they were younger. So it sort of, yeah, like I said, it all made sense when you explained it to the guests and how things all went together, and it went back to how the pigs were actually fed um, with their diets, and then there was yogurt on the plate and that sort of thing.
With the restaurant being so successful, what sort of pressures do you feel to maintain that status within the industry?
Well, I guess the guests nowadays there's a lot more knowledge. As a guest, they have the perception of knowing more. They want to know where things come from and how it's grown and that sort of thing. So being on top of that, I guess, and again, that's having that knowledge of working with small producers and be able to talk with them, and then you can sort of we have the opportunity to actually speak face to face with the guests, which is another thing that Sixpenny's so good for. We get to explain the dishes when we take them out to the table and that sort of thing, which is another thing and point of difference, I guess, for Sixpenny. Like we get to explain it instead of coming us passing it on to a waiter and then the waiter passing it on to the guest. We get to go face to face with the guest ourselves. So being able to explain that, I think it makes it a pretty special thing to do. And yeah, like I said, it gives that point of difference to change things up for the guest.
What's that experience been like for you as a chef that's normally in the kitchen cooking and then having the interface and connection with consumers every single service? Was that challenging at first, or is it something that you've grown to love?
Um, at first, yeah, I was shit scared. Hated going out. I'm not a big fan. Like I do love it and trying to get that sort of that message across of what we're trying to do and like I said, and pushing the what the farmers are trying to do and that sort of thing, pushing that across to the guests and making sure they know all that and that sort of stuff. But yeah, when we first started doing it, it was a pretty scary thing, especially when I was cooking on a section back when we first begun, and then I was called up to take a dish out to the table, and I was like had no idea what I was doing, and yeah, it was pretty confronting at the beginning, but yeah, it's not too bad now. Like I don't know, like I said, it's enjoyable to go out and talk to a guest and sort of get that uh, that story behind each dish and how it began and the thought process of it and like I said, the farmers and get their story across and it's nice to be able to tell the story to the guest.
What is it that you love about what you do?
I think it's just I don't know. Cooking for me is I don't know. I think it was everything. Like I come home. You'll come home after working a 12-hour day, and like I still want to cook dinner, or I still want to do that sort of thing, or the next day, I still want to cook again. I guess it's something that it's something that you really need a passion for because it's probably I think it's one of the hardest jobs there is. You're stuck in sometimes a small confined area with a couple of number of other chefs in a hot area for hours and hours on end. It's not the easiest work environment, but again, it's something I guess you just gotta love, and I think that's what makes the most of it. You just gotta get in there and yeah, give it a good red hot crack.
What does food mean to you, and has that changed with your years at Sixpenny?
Um, yeah, it definitely has changed. I think the food at Sixpenny has definitely changed from the beginning, and I like to hope I've been a part of that as much as it has. But at the beginning, it was a lot more. I feel like it was a lot more fine dining. esque, where nowadays I think it's a bit more pared back and it's more, I don't know, it was a lot the flavor driven back then, but now I think it's, like you said, it's very simple on the plate. So there's three or four touches on some dishes, but if they're not right, like it just doesn't. The balance of the whole dish is just completely out. So I think just having that sort of thing. Yeah, I don't know. My food has definitely changed from being like wanting to be the fine dining where there's, I don't know, 5, 6, maybe 10 touches on a plate to something that's a little bit pared back, and that's how I like to eat as well.
Well, Aaron, it's extraordinary what you do, and considering how humble you are about it as well, we've loved having you on the Crackling today to hear your story. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.